as it turned lazily above her head. The air was thick and humid in the small room she shared with her younger siblings. It was a hot afternoon in Benin City, Edo State, and the electricity had gone out again. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her mind was far from the heat. She was dreaming of another life, a life far away from the narrow streets and open gutters of her neighborhood. "I will make her one day," she whispered to herself, using a common Nigerian phrase meaning "I will succeed one day." She had said it so many times, it had become a prayer. At 25 years old, Eme was the eldest of 3 children. She had finished secondary school and even learned hairdressing at a local salon. But jobs were scarce. Her mother, Mama Efe, sold smoked fish and yams in the market, barely earning enough to feed the family. Since her father passed away 3 years ago from a long illness, the weight of responsibility fell on Eme. She felt it every morning when she woke up to the sound of roosters and her mother's gentle singing of an old Benin folk song. Her siblings, Efe and Osas, looked up to her for guidance and support. "Big sister, we need new books for school," little Osas would say, and Eme's heart would tighten knowing she had no money to give. Every evening, after helping her mother cook garri and soup, Eme would sit outside their compound on a wooden bench, fanning herself and watching the sun set in a haze of red dust. She often talked with her friend and neighbor, Ivie, about their dreams. "If I get chance to go abroad, I no go think am twice," Ivie would say, eyes shining. "If I had the chance to go abroad, I wouldn't even hesitate." They had heard stories of people from Benin City who traveled overseas and came back with wealth. There were rumors about big houses built by sons and daughters who went to Italy, Spain or France. In church, they had testimonies of helpers abroad sending money home. To girls like Ene and Ivie, the lure of a better life across the ocean was a siren song impossible to ignore. One sticky evening, as the generators hummed in the distance during another blackout, a woman visited their compound. She arrived in a shiny black car that kicked up dust as it pulled in. She was well dressed in a bright Ankara skirt and blouse, gold bangles jangling on her wrist. The woman introduced herself as Auntie Grace. She spoke kindly to Mama Efe, complimenting her on how smart and beautiful Eme was. Eme watched from the doorway, curiosity and hope blooming in her chest. Over a simple dinner of yam porridge that night, Auntie Grace cleared her throat and spoke softly but clearly. "I have a business partner in Europe," she said. "In France, he owns a boutique and is looking for assistants. I can help Eme get there, find her a good job. She can earn good money and help her family." Eme's heart pounded. The way Auntie Grace described it, a boutique in France, good salary, maybe even a chance to learn more skills. It sounded like the very opportunity she had prayed for. She glanced at her mother. Mama Efe looked hesitant, worry lines creasing her forehead. "Madam, I no get money for any big travel," her mother said. "We don't have money for any big travel." Auntie Grace waved her hand dismissively, gold bangles clinking. "No need. I will handle the expenses," she assured. "We will arrange her passport, visa, ticket. It's an investment. She can pay back small when she starts work. Don't worry, ma." Ene could hardly believe it. Someone was offering to pay her way. It sounded too generous, yet Auntie Grace spoke with such confidence and warmth that hope drowned out doubt. After Auntie Grace left, Ene and her mother stayed up late talking in the dark. The only light, a kerosene lantern throwing flickers on the wall. "Mama, this might be my chance," Ene whispered, voice trembling with excitement and fear. "If I go and work, I fit send money. Osas and Efe can finish school. We can fix the leaking roof. You can rest, Mama." Her mother sighed deeply, reaching out to hold Ene's hand. "My daughter, your happiness is my prayer," Mama Efe said softly in their Bini dialect. "But I hear stories. People travel and suffer. I no wan make you suffer oh." Tears glistened in the older woman's eyes. Ene squeezed her mother's hand. "Mama, I will be careful. Auntie Grace said it's legitimate work." She tried to sound confident. In truth, a small voice in her mind whispered that things might not be so easy, but she pushed that aside. This was her shot. A week later, everything was arranged faster than Ene expected. Auntie Grace took her to get a passport in Lagos. Ene marveled at the efficiency. It seemed Auntie Grace had connections, because the usual long lines and delays somehow vanished for them. They even visited a local shrine on the outskirts of Benin City before traveling, at Auntie Grace's insistence. There, in a dim room thick with incense, a native doctor made Ene swear an oath. She picked her thumb and swore never to reveal any details of the arrangement, to obey her benefactors in Europe, and to repay whatever expenses were incurred. Ene's voice shook as she repeated the words, feeling a strange dread. But Auntie Grace smiled and told her it was just a tradition to protect everyone's interest. The night before her departure, Ene sat outside once more with Evie. The moon was a thin crescent in the sky. "Na so my life go change, Evie," Ene said, trying to convince herself as much as her friend. "My life is about to change. By this time next year, maybe I go don build house for my mama." Evie gripped her hand. "You get luck, Ene. I wish say na me." "You are lucky, Ene. I wish it was me. But don't forget me when you reach there oh," she added with a teasing smile. Ene laughed lightly, though her stomach fluttered at the mention of Europe. It felt unreal. "I no go forget you, I promise." As Ene prepared for bed, she looked around their one-room home. Her mother and siblings were already asleep on the mat on the floor. She promised herself she would make this sacrifice worth it. She would work hard, earn money, and return home a hero who lifted her family from poverty. With a determined nod in the darkness, Ene closed her eyes and prayed silently. "Dear God, bless my journey. Don't let anything happen to me. Let this be the answer to our prayers." In her heart, she believed she was on the brink of a new beginning. The day of Ene's departure came swiftly. At dawn, she hugged her mother tightly at the bus stop in Benin City. Tears streamed down Mama Efe's face as she pressed a small Bible into Ene's hands. "God will protect you, my child," she said, voice quavering. Osas and Efe clung to Ene's arms, not wanting to let go. Ene fought back her own tears and forced a smile. "I will call as soon as I reach Europe," she promised, hoping her words sounded more confident than she felt. "I go make all of una proud." With a final wave, she boarded the bus to Lagos with Auntie Grace by her side. The journey to Lagos and the flight out of Nigeria felt like a dream. Ene had never been on an airplane before. As the plane roared into the sky, she pressed her face to the window. The sprawling city of Lagos receded beneath her, a patchwork of tin roofs and highways disappearing under clouds. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety twisting in her stomach. She clutched the little cross necklace Mama Efe gave her and silently prayed, "Let this journey be safe. Let my new life be good." After a long flight with a brief stopover, The plane landed in Paris. The air that greeted her outside Charles de Gaulle Airport was crisp and cold, so different from the humid heat of Nigeria. Ene shivered in her light jacket. She had dressed in her Sunday best, a neatly pressed blouse and skirt, wanting to make a good first impression on the boss at the boutique. Her instructions were clear. A contact would meet her at the airport holding a placard with her name. Through the crowd of strangers speaking a language she didn't understand, Ene saw a tall man holding a sign that read Ene. He was dark-skinned, possibly African, with a thin build and weary eyes. She approached him, clutching her one duffel bag. "Hello, I am Ene," she said softly. The man gave a curt nod and attempted a smile. "Welcome, Abiyo." He replied in accented English, confirming he was indeed Ghanaian. "Come, let's go." Yo took her bag and led her to a car parked outside. As they drove out of the airport, Ene peered out at the foreign landscape. Modern buildings, speeding cars, bright advertisements in French. Her heart fluttered with nervous excitement. "Excuse me, sir," she addressed Yo timidly. "Are we going to the boutique now?" Yo glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't read. "Soon," he said simply. They drove for over an hour. The city side of Paris eventually gave way to quieter suburbs and then an older industrial area. Dusk was falling when Yo finally pulled up to a nondescript three-story apartment building with grey walls. The area seemed deserted and quiet, far from the bustling city center Ene had imagined. Yo helped her out and guided her inside. They climbed narrow stairs to the second floor. Ene's heart began to pound again, but this time with unease. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice small in the dim corridor. Before Yo could answer, a door at the end of the hallway opened. A woman stood there by a harsh white light from inside. "So, this is the new girl?" the woman asked in a sharp tone. She stepped forward, revealing a plump figure, dark skin, and a hard expression. She looked to be in her 40s. She wore a tight dress and high heels, her hair a sleek wig. There was a heavy scent of perfume mixed with cigarette smoke around her. Yo nodded. "Yes, madam." Ene blinked. "Madam?" The word sent a prickle of dread through her. The woman eyed Ene up and down, then gave a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Come in," she said. Inside, the apartment was small and furnished. The living room light cast a yellow glow on peeling wallpaper. On a couch sat two other young women around Ene's age, both Nigerians by the look of them. They gave Ene sympathetic, almost pitying looks as she entered. "Welcome to France, Ene," the older woman said. "My name is Madame Florence. You can call me Auntie Flo." Her tone was overly sweet, and it made Ene's skin crawl slightly. Still clutching her bag, Ene mustered a polite smile. "Good evening, ma," she greeted, as taught to respect elders. "Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I am ready to start work at the boutique." She tried to keep her voice steady, despite the growing uncertainty gnawing at her. At the mention of a boutique, one of the girls on the couch looked down, covering her face, while the other sucked her teeth in apparent frustration. Madame Floris's smile vanished. She narrowed her eyes at Yo. "Boutique? What boutique?" she asked with a cold edge. Yo shifted uncomfortably. "That's what she was told in Nigeria," he explained quietly. Madame Florence rolled her eyes and let out a short bitter laugh. "Ah, I see. They sweet-mouthed you to get you here." She stepped closer to Ene, her perfume overwhelming. Listen well, girl. There is no boutique. The job you came for is different. The room felt like it was closing in. Ernest's mouth went dry. I don't understand, she stammered. Auntie Grace said, forget whatever lies they told you, girl. Madame Florence snapped, her voice hard. You are here to work for me. The real work is what I say it is. She paused, letting the words sink in. You owe me for the expenses to bring you here. Your visa, your ticket, everything. That's 50,000 euros, and you must pay back. Ernest's eyes widened as if she had been slapped. 50,000? She echoed in disbelief. That astronomical sum swelled in her head. She had never even seen 50,000 naira in one place back home, let alone euros. Yes, Madame Florence said, her smile now thin and cruel. 50,000 euro. You will pay me every cent. And the only job you would be doing is sex work. The words hit Ene like a physical blow. She staggered back a step, shaking her head violently. No, ma. There must be a mistake, she cried, panic rising in her throat. I came to work in a shop. I can't. Her voice broke. Madame Florence's expression turned stony. She jerked her chin at Yo. Show her. Before Ene could react, Yo gently took her arm and turned her around. In one swift motion, he unzipped the back of her dress. Ene gasped and struggled, but he held her shoulders firmly, exposing part of her back. Over her shoulder, Ene saw Madame Florence reach into a drawer and pull out a small handheld mirror. She pressed it against Ene's back. Look, Madame Florence ordered. Twisting her neck, Ene saw her own reflection in the mirror and froze. There, hidden under her clothing, there are several fresh scars on her back and shoulder. Thin, deliberate cuts, now healed into dark lines. She recognized them with horror. They were marks from the juju oath ceremony she had undergone. The native doctor had inscribed them when she made her sworn loyalty. Her stomach dropped. They are from the oaths, she whispered, fear flooding her. She remembered the stern face of the native doctor, the threat of death if she disobeyed. Madame Florence lowered the mirror. You swore an oath before you left, didn't you? She said, voice low and dangerous. That oath binds you. If you try to run or cheat me, you think the spirit will let you live? You think your family will be safe? Ene trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks. She felt dizzy, the room spinning. Please, I can't do that kind of work, she begged, wrapping her arms around herself. I will do anything else, cleaning, hairdressing, please. Madame Florence's face hardened like stone. This is not a negotiation, she said sharply. You belong to me now, until your debt is paid. You will sleep with men. That is how you pay. She nodded at the other two girls. They all went through the same thing. Ask them. One of the girls, a slim dark-skinned girl with tired eyes, spoke up softly. Sister, just do as she says. It's hard, but if you don't... She trailed off, but her eyes conveyed the warning. Madame Florence stepped forward and slapped Ene across the face. The crack of palm against cheek echoed in the small room. No more nonsense, she hissed. Cry all you want tonight, but from tomorrow you will walk. Yo, take her bag. She won't need anything she brought. Ene clutched her duffel reflexively. It had her clothes, a few naira notes, her Bible, and the phone her mother had saved up to buy her for the trip. Please, ma, at least let me keep my phone, she pleaded. I promised my family I will call. Phone? Madame Florence nodded. To call who? So you can report us or beg your family for money? She yanked the bag from Enne's hands with surprising strength and tossed it to Yo. "Take it. Search it later." Yo looked at Enne apologetically but followed others, leaving the room with the bag. Enne's heart sank as she watched her last connection to home vanish behind the door with him. "You will stay here with the other girls," Madame Florence said, adjusting her dress calmly as if nothing happened. "They will teach you the rules. If you behave, you will eat and maybe even earn small allowance. If you try anything foolish, police, running, or you refuse clients, remember that oath. If that doesn't scare you, I have other ways to deal with disobedience." With that final threat, she turned on her heel and left the room, her high heels clinking on the tile floor down the hall. As the door slammed shut, Enne felt her legs give way. She sank to the floor, sobbing. Her mind was a whirlwind. "This can't be real. God, what do I do? Mama, oh God, help me." The two other girls knelt beside her, wrapping their arms around her trembling form. One stroked her hair gently. "I know, sister, I know," the girl murmured. "My name is Favor. I'm from Delta. This is Aisha. Just cry for now. It's always like this the first day." Through her tears, Enne choked out. How can I live like this?" Aisha, the quieter girl, whispered, "We survive. You have to. Think of your family. Once you pay, you can be free." Her voice wavered. It sounded more like she was trying to convince herself than Enne. Enne remembered Madame Florence's words. 50,000 euros. An unimaginable debt. And the work was something she never dreamed she would have to do. She felt sick to her stomach, grief and terror mixing inside her. That night, curled up on a mattress on the floor between Favor and Aisha, Enne stared at the dark ceiling. Silent tears slid from her eyes, soaking the thin pillow. In a tiny voice, she prayed the only words that came to her lips. "Please, God, help me." In the next room, behind a closed door, Ross sat on a stool with Enne's duffel bag at his feet. He could hear Enne's muffled sobbing through the wall. With a heavy sigh, he pulled out her phone and switched it off. As he searched through her belongings under Madame Florence's watchful eye, he felt a tinge of guilt for the role he played, but he pushed it down. He told himself he was just following orders, just doing a job. Yet, even as he tried to harden his heart, he couldn't escape the echo of Enne's heartbroken cries in the dark. The next days blurred into a waking nightmare for Enne. True to her word, Madame Florence wasted no time. On Enne's very first night on duty, she was forced to dress in skimpy clothing, a tight skirt and a low-cut top, and paraded to a street corner in a seedy part of the city. The neon glow of distant bars and the headlights of passing cars illuminated the darkness. Yo drove the girls there in a van and dropped them off under a bridge, where several other women, mostly African and Eastern European, loitered. Enne's heart hammered in her chest as a cold wind beat into her bare arms and legs. Favor stayed close to her, whispering instructions. When a car stops, try to smile. If they roll down the window, ask, "Are you looking for a girl?" Favor's French was basic, but enough to get by. Enne barely managed to nod. Her throat was dry and her palms were sweaty. She felt detached from her body, as if watching someone else live in horror. Not long after, a small blue car pulled up to the curb. A middle-aged white man with a bowed head gestured towards Enne and spoke in French. She froze, not understanding his words, but Favor nudged her forward. "Go." Favor urged under her breath. On unsteady legs, Enne approached the car. The man eyed her hungrily, said something she guessed was a prize, and opened the passenger door. Her mind screamed not to get in, but she thought of the scars on her back and the oath, of Auntie Grace's deceitful smile, of Madame Florence's slap and cold eyes, With a deep shaky breath, she got into the car. The next hour was the most degrading and painful of Enne's life. The man took her to a cheap hotel nearby that rented rooms by the hour. Inside the dim, dirty room that smelled of sweat and cigarettes, he ordered her in crude gestures to undress. Enne stood by the bed, heart pounding so loudly she thought she would faint. When she didn't move fast enough, he grew impatient and yanked her blouse, popping its cheap buttons. "Please, no," she whispered in English, tears brimming, but he didn't care. He pushed her onto the bed. Enne shut her eyes and went somewhere far in her mind. She tried to picture her mother's face, her siblings playing in the sun, the sound of church choirs on Sunday morning, anything to block out what was happening. It was over quickly, but it left her bruised, bleeding, and so crushed. When the man was done, he tossed a few euro bills at her and left without a word. She lay there trembling, pulling the tattered remains of her dignity and her clothing around her. A flood of tears came, but she muffled her sobs into the pillow. She felt dirty, broken, and terribly alone. A knock on the door startled her. "Time to go," came a low voice in English. It was Yo, sent by Madame Florence to collect her. With a shaking hand, Enne wiped her eyes and stumbled to the door. Yo's gaze flickered over her disheveled body. Her torn blouse, the bruise forming on her cheek where the man had struck her in his lust. For a brief moment, Yo's face twisted with anger, but not at her. He looked like he wanted to say something but remained silent. He handed her a cheap coat. "Wear this," he said quietly. Enne nodded, numb, and wrapped the coat around herself to hide her shame. That night, back at the apartment, Enne cried until she had no tears left. Favor and Aisha tried their best to comfort her, but they were all trapped in the same hell. Each night was a repeat of the last. Sometimes 2 or 3 men in one night, different faces, different rooms, but the same pain and humiliation. Some men were cruel, some silent. A few were even gentle in their own way, which somehow hurt Enne because it made her remember what normal life felt like. The only constants were the cash exchanged and the emptiness it left in her heart. During the days, the girls were cooped up in the apartment, catching sleep if they could, or doing chores under Madame Florence's watch. Madame Florence would collect the previous night's earnings each morning, counting the crumpled euro note with a greedy glint in her eye. Out of maybe 200 euro a night, Enne might earn for her. The madame gave her barely 5 euro for toiletries or snacks. Feeding money. She called it with a smile. Enne often wasn't even hungry. A heavy sadness sat in her stomach at all times. The only respite was that once a week, Madame Florence allowed a short supervised phone call home, not out of kindness, but to keep families from raising alarm. On one such occasion, about 2 months into her ordeal, Enne was handed her own phone, with the SIM card replaced to a French number. To call Nigeria while Madame Florence listened, her hand shook as she dialed her mother's number. It rang, and then Mama Efe's voice came through, full of eagerness and love. "Hello, Enne, is that you?" At the sound of her mother's voice, Enne almost broke down. She beat her tongue hard to stop herself from sobbing. "Mama, yes, it's me," she managed, trying to keep her voice bright. Madame Florence sat across from her, arms folded, eyes narrowed, making sure she said nothing out of line. "My daughter, how are you? How is work?" her mother asked. "We have been praying for you." In the background, Enne could hear her siblings excitedly chattering, "Big sister, big sister." Enne swallowed the lump in her throat. "I am fine, Mama," she lied, forcing a smile through tears. Work is fine. Work is very fine. I'm just busy. That's why I haven't called. I miss you all." "We miss you too, oh," Mama Efe replied. "Your brother and sister, they are here. They want to talk." Madame Florence made a slicing motion across her throat, indicating time was up. Ernest's panic spiked. She had so much she wanted to say, but instead she blurted quickly. "Tell them I love them. I have to go now. Bye, Mama. God bless." The call was cut as Madame Florence snatched the phone. "Very sweet," Madame Florence said with a cruel chuckle. "Now, no more calls until I decide." She pocketed the phone again. Ernest crumpled into a chair, burying her face in her hands. The ache of hearing her family's voices and not being able to tell them the truth was almost as unbearable as the night on the streets. As the weeks turned into months, a heavy numbness settled over Ernest. She learned to obey without a protest, to plaster a fake smile for customers, to disconnect her mind from her body. But inside, she was withering away. She barely recognized herself whenever she caught a glimpse in the mirror. Her once bright eyes were sunken and dull, her cheeks hollow. She also noticed something else. Her health was deteriorating. She was always exhausted and had constant colds. One chilly evening in the 6th month of her bondage, Ernest returned from a long night, shivering not just from the autumn cold, but from fever. Her head throbbed and her throat was sore. By the time Yo brought her and Favor back from the apartment, Ernest was swaying on her feet. Upstairs, Madame Florence noticed her glazed eyes and the way she wobbled. "What's wrong with you?" the madame asked with a scowl. "Ma, I feel very sick," Ernest whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. She was trembling uncontrollably now, her body aching. Madame Florence clicked her tongue in annoyance. "You better not be getting any kind of disease, oh. If you can't walk, you are useless to me." She waved a dismissive hand. "Go and sleep, take paracetamol. You must be fine by tomorrow night. Understand?" Tears of frustration gathered in Ernest's eyes as she nodded meekly and headed to the small bedroom. Favor followed, helping her lie down on the mattress and covering her with the single thin blanket they shared. Ernest's teeth chattered. "It's okay," Favor said softly, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. "Try to rest." That night, Ernest's fever climbed. She had nightmares. She was running through a dark forest while faceless men chased her. She saw her mother calling out to her from across a river, but Ernest was drowning and couldn't answer. She woke up multiple times, sweating and coughing. At one point, she stumbled to the toilet and retched until only bitter bile came out. Her moans must have been loud because the door creaked open and Yo stepped in, carrying a cup of water. The girls normally were not allowed any visitors in their room, especially not men. Or perhaps Madame Florence wasn't around, or Yo had decided to risk it. He knelt beside Ernest, helping her sit up enough to sip the water. "Easy," he whispered as she coughed. "Drink." Ernest's vision was blurry, but she recognized Yo's kind gesture. It was the first gentle touch she had experienced in months. When the water soothed her raw throat, she managed a hoarse, "Thank you." Yo nodded. He placed a small bottle of medicine in Favor's hand. "It's fever medicine," he murmured. "Give it to her. Madam doesn't need to know." As Yo turned to leave, Ernest reached out and caught his hand weakly. "Yo," she croaked. He paused, looking down at her. In the dim light, his face looked troubled, shadows under his eyes as if he hadn't slept well either. Why are you doing this?" Ernest managed to ask. "We are human beings, why?" Yo opened his mouth, but no words came. He gently squeezed her hand. "Rest now, okay?" he said, avoiding the question. "Get better first." Then he slipped out as quietly as he had come. It was a simple act of kindness. A bit of water, medicine, a soft word. But in the bleak world Ernest lived in, it was like a ray of sunlight in a cave. That night, she slept a little more peacefully, clutching the thought that maybe, just maybe, there was still some goodness around her. However, not all night brought comfort. One night, just a week after her fever, tragedy struck that shook everyone in the apartment. Aisha, the shy girl who rarely spoke of home, decided to risk everything. Despair had taken hold of her after nearly a year in captivity. That evening, instead of going out to the street, Aisha slipped away down the alley. She had told Favor and Ene in a trembling voice that she couldn't take it anymore, that she would rather die than continue. They tried to dissuade her, but her eyes were distant, filled with the kind of resignation that frightened Ene. When Madame Florence realized Aisha was missing from her post, all hell broke loose. She screamed at Yo to find her. Yo drove through the area frantically. Ene and Favor were forced to continue taking clients, even as dread knotted in their stomachs about Aisha's fate. Hours later, just before dawn, Yo found Aisha. She had tried to run to the main road to perhaps flag a taxi or reach a police station, but she was lost and desperate. Yo, along with another enforcer from the syndicate, a burly Nigerian man named Osaro, cornered her near a closed storefront. Ene didn't witness it, but she heard the letter whispers, how Aisha screamed and begged, how Osaro beat her brutally right there on the pavement to teach her a lesson. By the time they dragged Aisha back to the apartment, she was half conscious, her face swollen and bloodied, her breath shallow. Madame Florence was livid. "Stupid girl," she spat, standing over Aisha's limp form on the floor. "I want all of you. This is what happens when you cross me." She delivered a vicious kick to Aisha's side. The girl let out a weak cry, calling up in agony. Ene could no longer hold back. She lunged forward and grabbed Madame Florence's arm, a surge of anger and grief overpowering her fear. "Stop it! You will kill her!" she cried. For her boldness, Ene received a backhand across her mouth. She tasted blood as her lips split. Osaro shoved her away, and she fell against the wall, stunned. Madame Florence sneered, "Maybe that juju oath was not enough for some of you. If anyone else has foolish ideas, remember this sight." She gestured at Aisha, who was now whimpering on the floor. "Yo, lock this one in the spare room. No food for her until I decide what to do." Yo hesitated, looking at Aisha's broken state. "Madam, she needs a doctor," he said quietly. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Madame Florence snapped. "Do as I say, or you want to join her?" Ene, holding her bleeding lip, saw the conflict in Yo's eyes as he carefully picked up Aisha's frail body. Aisha was barely conscious, her eyes rolling back. Favor was sobbing silently beside Ene, her hands clutched in prayer. Yo carried Aisha to a tiny storage room and laid her on a mat. Madame Florence locked the door herself and pocketed the key. "Let her rot for a bit," she said coldly. That night was the worst since Ene's arrival. She and Favor huddled together, crying softly, terrified of what would happen to Aisha and to themselves. "God, have mercy," Favor whispered over and over, clutching a tiny cross pendant around her neck. No one saw Aisha for 2 days. Madame Florence refused to unlock the door, ignoring the weak cries that occasionally came from inside. "Maybe this will teach her," she said, lighting a cigarette casually. On the 3rd day, the cries stopped. Yo finally dared to speak up again. "Madam, please, let me check on her," he urged, voice strained. "If she dies..." "Fine," Madame Florence hissed, throwing the key at her. "Bring her out, that useless thing." When Yo opened the door, a sore smell wafted out. Ene stood behind him, heart in her throat. Aisha lay motionless on the mat, eyes closed. Yo knelt and gently shook her. "Aisha," he called. There was no response. He lifted her into his arms and carried her out to the light. Aisha's face was ashen, lips cracked. Ene touched her forehead. It was cold. No! Ene whispered. Her worst fear realized. Madame Florence clicked her tongue and muttered, "What a waste." Fervor let out a wail, clamping her hand over her mouth. Yor's shoulders trembled as he held Aisha's body. His eyes glistened with tears he couldn't hide. Perhaps he saw in Aisha the same fate that awaited all of them if nothing changed. Madame Florence, annoyed by the scene, backed orders to Yor and Osaro to get rid of the corpse and clean up that room, as if Aisha's life meant nothing at all. They took Aisha away. Ene and Fervor were not told where, but Ene suspected they buried her in secret or dumped her somewhere to avoid police attention. Aisha was gone just like that. A young life full of hopes and dreams, snuffed out in a foreign land. That night, Ene could not sleep at all. Grief and rage coursed through her veins. She silently mounted a prayer for Aisha's soul. Tears wet on her face. In the bunk above, Fervor sniffled in the dark. Ene's thoughts also drifted to Yor. She remembered the tears in his eyes as he carried Aisha's body, the way his hands shook, giving her medicine during her fever. Maybe Yor did not have a heart after all, trapped under the weight of whatever had brought him into this evil trade. Clenching her fist, Ene realized she could not continue like this. Aisha's fate had made one thing clear. If she stayed, she might never leave this place alive. Debt or no debt, I must escape or I would die here, she thought. But the oath and the threats, fear, still paralyzed her. In the solitude of her sorrow, Ene finally allowed herself a dangerous sliver of hope. If there was even a small chance to break free, she had to take it. And the only person who might help her was the last person she ever imagined, Yor. Yor sat alone in his small room adjacent to the garage, long after midnight. The events of the past week weighed heavily on him. He buried his face in his hands, but he could not bury the images in his mind. Aisha's lifeless body, Ene's split lip and tear-streaked face as she confronted Madame Florence. The fear and despair that hung over all the girls like a dark cloud. Yor was a man who never imagined his life would come to this. Years ago, he left Ghana in search of better opportunities. France had promised jobs, money, a future. Instead, he fell in with the syndicate when a countryman introduced him to easy work, driving and guarding. At first, he told himself he was just providing security, that the women choose this life. But over time, he saw the truth. The bruises they tried to hide, the sobs he had through thin walls, and now death. Aisha's death shattered whatever excuses he had left. He thought of his younger sister back home in Accra. She could be about Ene's age. The thought of someone treating his sister the way these women were treated made him feel sick. He had to get out. More than that, he felt a tug of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Conscience. He knew if he walked away alone, leaving those girls behind, he might never forgive himself. But he was just one man against a dangerous network. What could he do? A soft knock at his door startled him. For a moment, he feared it was Madame Florence or one of the enforcers. But when he cautiously opened the door, he found Ene standing there. Her face was drawn and pale, the faint bruises from the other day still on her skin. She slipped inside quickly, wringing her hands. "Ene, why are you here? If they catch you," Yor whispered urgently, glancing outside before closing the door. Ene's eyes were red-ringed but determined. "I had to talk to you," she said in a low voice. "I can't stay here any longer, Yor. I will die if I do. You saw what happened to Aisha." Her voice trembled. "Please, if there is any kindness in your heart, help me. I beg you." Yor felt a lump in his throat. He had expected this, perhaps even wanted it. Yet hearing her plea face to face was overwhelming. He stepped back, running a hand over his shaved head. Ene, you don't understand. If we try to run and they catch us, he didn't finish. The consequences would be fatal for both of them. Ene took a step closer. They won't catch us, she said, as if willing it to be true. You know their operations, their schedules. You can find a way. I'll do anything you say. I just can't live like this anymore. She lowered her voice further. The juju, maybe it will kill me for breaking the oath, but I would rather die trying to be free than live in this hell. Her words echoed Yor's own thoughts. He looked into her eyes. They were filled not just with desperation, but a glimmer of hope that he could not bear to extinguish. He made his decision in that moment. Okay, he breathed. I will help you. Ene gasped softly, hardly believing she had right. You will? Yor gave a single firm nod. Yes, we both need to leave. I can't stay here either. Relief and gratitude flooded Ene's face, and tears slid down her cheeks. God bless you, Yor. God bless you, she whispered, almost collapsing. He gently steadied her, and for a brief moment they embraced, two people bound by suffering, clinging to the promise of escape. They spent the next few days planning in absolute secrecy. Yor wanted Ene to act as normal as possible, to continue obeying Madame Florence without question, so no suspicion would arise. Ene agreed, masking the flicker of hope inside her with the same blank expression she had worn for months. Yor's plan was risky but straightforward. He knew of a late-night flight from Paris to Lagos 2 days from now. He would buy 2 tickets in cash. The hardest part would be retrieving Ene's passport and documents from Madame Florence's locked cabinet. That and slipping away undetected. Luck seemed to favor them when, the night before their intended escape, Madame Florence announced she would be traveling to another city overnight to handle business. She left Yor in charge of the girls with Osaro, the other guard, keeping watch as usual. This was the window Yor needed. As soon as Madame Florence was gone, Yor sprung into action. Under the guise of routine, he went into her office room, something he was permitted to do, to fetch logbooks or money bags. With trembling hands, he used a metal nail file to pick open the cheap lock on her cabinet. It opened far easier than he expected. Inside were passports and documents in clear bags for each girl. He found Ene's Nigerian passport, along with a small purse containing her ID card and a few personal items Auntie Grace had likely collected during recruitment. He tucked them into his jacket. He also grabbed a bundle of cash, likely part of the nightly earnings, knowing they would need money. That night, Yor drove Favor and Ene to the usual street corner as always. Their flight was just after midnight, and they would need to leave straight from the street to the airport in the van. Yor caught Ene's eyes in the rear view mirror and gave a slight nod. Their silent signal. Ene's heart thundered with both fear and anticipation. Around 10 p.m., Yor pretended to receive a phone call. He spoke loudly enough for Favor to hear, fabricating a story that a client had requested one girl be sent to a nearby motel outside the usual area. He glanced at Ene and made a show of reluctance on the phone. This late? Fine, I will bring her. Hanging up, he turned to Favor and Ene. I need to take Ene to meet a customer, a special request. He said, Favor, you stay here, Osaro will keep an eye on you until I return. Favor looked unhappy to be left alone with Osaro, but she nodded. Ene could barely breathe. She wanted to hug Favor goodbye, but dared not to arouse suspicion with anything unusual. Instead, she simply said, be safe, my sister. A double-edged farewell that Favor took as routine. Yor led Ene back into the van, and they pulled away from the curb. The moment they turned the corner and were out of sight, Yor pressed his foot on the accelerator. Down, he ordered, so Osaro won't see you if he looks this way. Ene slid down in the seat, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would burst. They sped through the city streets. The airport was on the opposite end of town. Every red traffic light felt like an enemy delaying them. Ene kept glancing through the back window, terrified they would see Osaro's car chasing them, or that somehow Madame Florence knew, but the roads were dark and empty of any pursuers. At the airport, Yo parked in a far corner of the lot. He handed Ene a scarf and a large coat he had stashed, items he had prepared to change her appearance slightly. "Cover your hair with this," he said. Ene wrapped the colorful scarf around her hair and shoulders. "Walk beside me, head down. Let me do the talking," Yo instructed. Inside the brightly lit terminal, Ene felt exposed and anxious. It was busy even at night, with travelers hurrying to catch red-eye flights. To her surprise, Yo guided her not to the main check-in, but to a self-service kiosk, where he retrieved their boarding passes that he had booked online earlier. He then led her straight to security, bypassing the check-in counter, meant no one scrutinized their documents at length. At the immigration control, an officer looked at Ene's passport and frowned at the visa page. Her visa had indeed expired months ago. "Her visa has expired. You have overstayed your visa," he said. Ene's heart nearly stopped. She didn't understand all these words, but she could guess. "Please, I'm going home," she said in English, her voice quavering. Yo quickly intervened in English, his Ghanaian accent earnest and polite. "Officer, we are returning to our country. We have some issues, but we just want to leave France." He met the officer's gaze steadily. "No plans to come back, sir, we promise." The officer looked at the very young woman and the man beside her. After a tense pause, he exhaled and stamped the passport. He muttered about procedures and that she might be flagged if she ever tried to return to France. But at last, he waved them through. Only when they were finally past immigration did Ene realize she had been holding her breath. She wanted to cry in relief. Yo gave her a reassuring nod, though his own hands were shaking slightly as they picked up their small carry-on, just one bag Yo had prepared with a few clothes and water. They boarded the plane just as final calls were echoing through the airport. Sliding into the airplane seat, side by side, they exchanged a glance of disbelief. It felt surreal. Minutes later, as the plane taxied and lifted off, the lights of Paris glittered below. Ene let out a sob she had been holding in, covering her mouth. Yo placed a gentle hand on her back as she cried silently, tears of both joy and grief. She was leaving behind a nightmare, but also leaving behind favor and others whose fates were uncertain. Midway through the flight, after Ene had cried herself into an exhausted sleep against the window, Yo stared out in the darkness of the sky. He felt a weight slowly lifting off his soul. He had done something right, perhaps the first truly right thing in years, but he also knew the danger wasn't completely over. He worried for favor and even for himself. Madame Florence would be furious. He doubted the syndicate would chase him to West Africa, but one could never be sure. He decided once he saw Ene safely home, he would head to Ghana and lay low. In the dim cabin, Ene woke and looked at Yo. For the first time in months, her eyes held a spark of life. "Thank you," she whispered. Yo managed a small smile. "Don't thank me yet," he said softly. "Thank me when you are home, truly home, safe with your family." Ene nodded and then, with hesitation, voiced a fear that had been gnawing at her. "Yo, the oath I took, I'm breaking it. They said I would die if I disobeyed or ran." Her hand unconsciously touched the scars on her back. "I'm scared, even now." Yo took a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I know those juju oaths are powerful in your mind," he said gently. "But remember what you told me. You would rather die free than live enslaved. You have your faith in God, don't you?" She nodded, clutching the little Bible which she had managed to retrieve from her bag. Hold on to that, Yor continued. Believe that God is stronger than any curse. You survived so much already. If the juju hasn't killed you yet, maybe it has no power compared to your will to live. Ene absorbed his words, then sighed. I pray you are right. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer under her breath, asking God for protection from any evil and thanking him for this chance at freedom. Yor watched her and quietly added his own prayer, something he hadn't done in years. In that silent moment, two broken souls flying high above the Sahara Desert found a silver of peace. The sun was setting by the time the bus from Lagos rumbled into Benin City. As the familiar sight of home came into view, the red earth, the roadside sellers hawking plantain and groundnut, the chaos of Okada motorcycles weaving through traffic, Ene felt a lump in her throat. I am home, she thought, tears of relief filling her eyes. After everything, she was back in Nigeria, back in her own state, alive. Yor helped her off the bus at the busy depot. The air was thick and warm, filled with the cacophony of shouting drivers and blowing horns. It was overwhelming yet comforting in its familiarity. Ene had called her mother from Lagos, using a borrowed phone at the motor park to give a brief cryptic message. Mama, I'm coming home. Please don't worry. I will explain when I arrive. Her mother had been shocked, sputtering with questions, but Ene had only repeated that she was on her way. Now, standing on the cracked pavement outside the bus terminal, Ene suddenly felt nervous. Would her family accept her after all that happened? She had left full of promise and returned with nothing but scars and sorrow, shame and fear ignored at her. They hired a taxi to take them the final stretch to her neighborhood. Yor remained by her side, carrying her meager bag. As the taxi navigated the narrow, dusty lane leading to her house, Ene spotted a small crowd out front. Word had spread quickly. Her family and neighbors had gathered. Her mother was at the forefront, craning her neck anxiously. The moment the taxi stopped, Ene stepped out. Mama, she cried, voice breaking. Ene, oh my God, Ene. Mama Efe rushed forward and enveloped her daughter in a tight embrace. She was sobbing openly, holding Ene as if she would never let go. Ene clung to her mother, tears streaming down her face. Over her mother's shoulder, she saw Osas and Efe, now taller and leaner than when she left, joining the hug. Their faces wet with tears too. Neighbors murmured in surprise and joy, some clapping at the reunion. To them, a daughter returning from abroad, even unexpectedly, was cause for celebration. They assumed she had made it big, or at least done well. Yor hung back respectfully until Ene gently took her mother's hand and turned towards him. Mama, this is Yor, she introduced softly. He's the one who helped me come home. Mama Efe, eyes swollen from crying, reached out and clasped Yor's hands in gratitude. Thank you, my son, she said earnestly. God will bless you. You brought my daughter back to me. Yor shook his head humbly. Ma, I could not leave her there. She's like a sister to me now. Everyone moved inside the small family compound. Curious faces peered in through the doorway, and a few close friends of the family slipped in too. Ene was exhausted, but she could see the questions in her mother's eyes. Mama Efe guided her to sit on a stool. You are so thin, my dear. Have you eaten? Are you hot? She fused over the bruises on Ene's face and arms, lightly touching a scar near her jaw. Ivie, her friend from next door, was among those gathered. Ivie placed a hand on Ene's shoulder gently. Ene, I thank God you are back. We are all worried when we didn't hear from you for months. Ene looked around at the expectant, loving faces of her family and friends. Emotion swelled in her chest. I will explain everything, she said quietly, voice trembling. But first, please, I need to rest a little. Mama Efe immediately shooed the others. Yes, let her rest. You people can come back tomorrow. She wiped her eyes and managed a smile for the onlookers. Thank you for welcoming her. We will talk later. Reluctantly, the small crowd dispersed, each offering words of welcome and patting Ernest back in support. Ivie squeezed Ernest's hand before leaving, worry etched on her face. Yo helped Osas carry a mattress into the main room for himself, insisting he could sleep there or even outside. But Mama Efe insisted he take the spot of honor and sleep in the room with Osas. You are our guest and our helper, she said firmly. That night, after a modest meal of cornmeal and vegetable stew that Mama Efe hurriedly prepared, Ene finally sat down with her immediate family and Yo. By the light of a single bulb, the power had mercifully came back on. Ene took a deep breath. It was time to tell her story. She began haltingly at first, describing how Auntie Grace had tricked her with promises of a boutique job in France. As she recounted the oaths at the shrine, her mother gasped, covering her mouth. They made you do that? Mama Efe exclaimed. Tears rolled down Ene's face as she continued, telling of her arrival in Paris, the moment she learned of the 50,000 euros debt, and the kind of work she was forced into. At this, her mother let out a loud sob and pulled Ene into her arms, as if to shield her from those memories. My God, her mother cried. Osas punched the wall in anger, and young Efe started to cry without fully understanding, only knowing her sister had been hurt badly. Yo quietly added details when Ene could not, describing how the traffickers operated, how many girls were trapped under Madame Florence. But Aisha lost her life. He spoke of the brutality of that world, his voice thick with remorse. The family listened in stunned horror and grief. Ivie had slipped back during the conversation and now sat in a corner, tears streaming down her face as she heard the truth of what her best friend had endured. It took a long time for Ene to finish her tale. By the end, everyone was crying. My daughter, I'm so sorry, Mama Efe kept repeating, rocking Ene in her arms like a child. If I had known, God could punish that Auntie Grace wherever she is. Ivie sniffled and said, I used to envy you, Ene. I wished it was me going abroad. I never knew it was like this. She shook her head, anger and sorrow in her eyes. We have to spread the word. This is happening to many girls. Yo nodded solemnly. There are many still out there. I regret every day I was part of it. I'll be giving the authorities all the information I have on the network. He had already decided to speak to the anti-trafficking agency through a contact the local pastor provided after hearing Ene's story. That night, Ene slept in her own home for the first time in half a year. It was not the triumphant return she had once imagined. There were no riches, no gifts, no tales of success, but she was surrounded by those who loved her, and for a moment she felt safe. Yo stayed up a while, sitting outside under the Nigerian sky, keeping watch out of habit. The humid air buzzed with crickets. He looked at the stars, whispering a prayer of thanks that they had made it this far. In the weeks that followed, Ene became a quiet beacon in her community, with Yo and Ivie by her side. She spoke at the local church and to a small women's group, bravely recounting her ordeal to warn other young women about the dangers of false promises. People listened with rapt attention and moist eyes. Human trafficking was a whispered reality in Benin City, but putting a familiar face to it made it painfully real. Ene's voice was soft but steady as she urged parents to be cautious and girls to be vigilant. Not all that glitters is gold, she said. I went looking for a dream and found a nightmare. Please, learn from my story. Her testimony reached the ears of local authorities. Officers from NAPTIP, Nigeria's anti-trafficking agency, came to take her statement. With Yo's help, She provided names, descriptions, and any details she remembered about Auntie Grace and Madame Florence's network. The officials assured her they would investigate and work with international agencies to find the traffickers. Ene nodded, hopeful that justice might come and that Favor and others still trapped might eventually be saved. Yet, even as hope bloomed around her, Ene's health was failing. The illness that had begun in France clung to her. Some days, she was too weak to leave her bed. She developed a persistent cough and night sweat. The local doctors was puzzled. Tests for the usual tropical diseases came back negative. They suspected her immune system had been compromised by the severe stress and perhaps an untreated infection. Whispers in the community hinted at a cause. The old woman muttered that the juju oath might be taking its price for being broken. Ene herself sometimes wondered if the cause was real after all. Late at night, when fever turned through her body, she would recall the native doctor's ominous words, "If you ever break this oath, may you die." She prayed fervently for God's mercy and tried to push those thoughts away, but as her sickness lingered, it grew harder to dismiss the fear. Mama Efe cared for her day and night, applying cool clothes to her forehead, spooning pepper soup into her mouth when she was too weak to feed herself. Yo postponed his return to Ghana, staying in Benin City to help the family. He could often be found on the front porch, silently keeping vigil or making trips to the pharmacy for medicine. One humid afternoon, Ene called Yo and her mother to her bedside. Sunlight filtered weakly through the window as Ene struggled to sit up. Her once vibrant eyes were now sunken, her skin peppery. Mamefe immediately propped her with pillows. "What is it, my love?" her mother asked gently, though her voice trembled with dread. Ene reached out and took her mother's hand in one of hers and Yo's hand in the other. "Mama, Yo," she said softly, "I want to thank you." "Hush, you'll be fine," her mother insisted, though tears filled her eyes. Ene gave a small smile. "I pray so. But if anything happens to me, I need you both to know I don't regret coming home. These last weeks with you, with my family, knowing I'm free, it's worth everything." She squeezed their hands weakly. "Please, continue what we have started. Tell others our story and take care of each other." Mamefe was openly crying now. "Nothing will happen to you, Ene. I reject it in Jesus' name." She sobbed. "You will get better, my child." Yo's eyes glistened as he nodded firmly. "You will get better. You still have to dance at your next birthday, remember?" He attempted with a smile, though his voice shook. Ene closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Amen," she whispered. But that night, her condition worsened drastically. She became delirious with fever. In a panic, the family rushed her to the local hospital. The doctors did all they could, fluids, oxygen, prayers, but as dawn broke, Ene's frail body could fight no more. She passed away with her mother holding one hand and Ivie holding the other. A soft hymn being sung through weeping lips. Yo stood just outside the door, pressing his fist to his mouth to hold in his grief as tears streamed down his face. Ene was buried in a week later in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Benin City. The sky was overcast, as if mourning with the hundreds of people who came to pay respects. News of her story has spread. Representatives from NGOs and even a journalist from Lagos attended. Having been moved by the young woman's courage, they listened as the local pastors spoke of the evils of trafficking and the need to protect the daughters of Nigeria. Mama Efe sat flanked by Osaz and Efe, clutching a framed photo of Ene in happier times, her quiet sobs muffled by a black veil. After the funeral, Yo lingered at the graveside long after others left, staring at the red earth that now covered the friend he couldn't save. He placed a small wooden carving, a symbol of protection from his Ghanaian hometown. On the mound of soil. "I am sorry," he whispered, voice cracking. "I promise, I won't let your story die, Ene." As he turned to leave, he saw Ivie and the journalist talking quietly. Ivie's eyes were swollen from crying, but there was determination in her voice as she said, "We must continue telling her story. Maybe it will save someone else." The journalist nodded, jotting notes, mentioning something about an article and pushing authorities for action. In that moment, Yor realized that Ene's journey was not truly over. Every person who had heard her story, her family, her friends, the officials and reporters, now carried a part of it with them. The fight against the traffickers who destroyed her life would go on, fueled by the truths she had bravely shared. Ene had dreamed of a better life, and though she met a tragic end, her voice would live on as a warning and a call to action. As Yor walked away under the grey sky, he allowed himself one last glance upward. "Thank you, Ene," he murmured, imagining her free from the pain at last. "Your light continues to shine." The wind carried a gentle warmth, almost like a response, a final farewell, and perhaps the beginning of another story yet to unfold. Moral lesson: desperation for a better life should never cloud our judgment or make us ignore the signs of danger. Ene's story teaches us that not every opportunity abroad is genuine, and many promises of quick success come with hidden traps. It is important to ask questions, seek trusted advice, and be patient with life. Parents must listen to their children, and community must speak up and protect each other. The story also reminds us that healing, justice, and redemption are possible even in darkness, and that our voices, no matter how broken, can still shine light and save others. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Ene on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V. And do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.